Welcome everyone to a special bonus episode of Everything EOS. I'm Zach Gall, an ICO data analyst at ICO Alert, the trusted ICO discovery platform. We've received tons of feedback asking us to bring on more guests to the show, so I hope you all enjoy this one. I hope to continue to do more bonus episodes like this one each week, in addition to the weekly news recaps that I've been doing with Rob Finch for about the last 5 months. For this week's bonus episode, I sat down with the founder and CEO of an EOS project called Lumeos. I first learned about Lumeos through their head of social marketing, Doug Aronson. I'd known Doug for about a year now. Since the summer of 2017, we used to be community admins for the identity platform Civic. So when Doug had mentioned that he was working on a new EOS project called Lumeos, I let him know I wanted to start bringing on more guests, so he got me in touch with Ali Ayash, their CEO and founder. Lumeos just launched their beta application a few days ago on August 1st. You can still sign up to be a beta tester. You can go to their website, lumeos.io. Lumeos, they'll be doing an initial token airdrop to the beta testers, and then they're eventually going to airdrop to all EOS token holders as well. And I just want to remind everyone to please continue to let us know your thoughts on the show by liking, subscribing, or leaving comments on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. We read all of your messages and appreciate all of the feedback you provide. Now, without further ado, this is Everything EOS. All right, I'm here today with Ali Ayash, the CEO and founder of Lumeos, who's building a DApp on EOS. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about your project?
Thanks. So we're working on building a project called Lumeos. It's kind of a decentralized infrastructure for data sharing, as well as a mobile application that comes with it on the EOS blockchain. So before Lumeos, I was a lead engineer and co-founder at BToken, decentralized home sharing platform on the Ethereum blockchain. That was like my first venture into a blockchain space. Before that, I was a software engineer at Google, Amazon, and mostly building distributed systems worldwide. So I jumped into blockchain, and I was pretty much fascinated early on with Ethereum, and then this year with EOS, mainly because of the scalability. And I wanted to build something like that that we can get to mainstream users, and it felt right to get something out. And the reason why we build Lumeos is because we want to kind of reimagine the way we share data online.
So what was your role at Google and Amazon? Obviously, those are two huge company names, and the fact that you have experience working there. What was your day-to-day role there as a developer?
So I was a software engineer, a distributed systems software engineer.
Cool. Any cool projects that we would, as the public, would know of, or was it just stuff that was kind of in-house?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it might not be too much secret, but like every single time you use Amazon, you hit some code that I've written, which I feel like is pretty cool.
That's awesome. So how long have you been in the blockchain space? Where'd you work first, Amazon or Google?
Oh yeah, so I was at Amazon Seattle for around 3 years, and then I moved to San Francisco, worked for Google for a couple of years, and then I started blockchain while I was still in Google. Like I started experimenting, mostly investing as well.
Got bit by the bug.
Yeah, and then later, that was early 2017, and when I actually committed and quit Google, in Q3 2017, and just started working on the blockchain company BToken. That's what got me into more of actual doing rather than just like being on the side.
And BToken was a pretty successful ICO. They're building on Ethereum, I believe, and I remember there was a lot of buzz around them earlier this year. When was that ICO? In January?
Yeah. So we launched our token we did an actual ICO, like a token offering in end of January 31st.
So with experience building a pretty major project on Ethereum, and now you're building on EOS, I saw you have some YouTube videos where you're kind of explaining the differences between the two. So what are some of the disadvantages, or not disadvantages, some of the weaknesses of Ethereum and some of the problems you couldn't solve that led you down the path to finding EOS and deciding to build your next big project on EOS?
Yeah, so I guess from like a developer perspective, with Ethereum, you have to take so many things into consideration that you wouldn't usually do if you're building something like in the cloud or in like a regular centralized cloud-based system. For instance, when you deploy something, when you deploy your application, your users, in order to interact with your smart contract through your application, there is this concept of a gas cost where you need to be connected to the blockchain, you need to send a transaction, you need to pay for it, and then expense it in a sense. And it comes from the fact that Ethereum is mostly transactional. And move on to the EOS blockchain, the paradigm kind of is different. The DApp developer pays ahead of time for their users, meaning that's what the concept of staking or staking EOS in order to get to RAM to power your DApp on EOS. So in a sense, the user doesn't have to worry about paying any of these gas costs, and then all the transactions that the users do that are blockchain backed will be for free. So that in a sense changes the UX from like the traditional Ethereum UX into the EOS UX, where it's very familiar to the user, the way like how to use a decentralized application on EOS, which is huge because our goal is to become mainstream, get to all the users out there. And for that, we don't want to teach them something new. Instead, let's give them something familiar and be able to get them more interested in the blockchain. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is mostly scalability. I know that Ethereum is working on scalability of the number of transactions per second to increase to thousands in the future. But for now, there's a lot of limitations in Ethereum if you're trying to launch something big, and the network can get congested very easily. On the other hand, with EOS, you just get your bandwidth staked. Now you own some part of the network regardless of all the other applications that are running. And it's scalable from day one. Like, I think this week, the number of transactions per second has peaked at 3,000 for EOS, and it's just slated to become, it just scales over time without major changes to the ecosystem, which is huge coming from Amazon, which at some days of the years we reach millions and millions of transactions per second. So it just made sense for me from a scalability perspective to go with the EOS ecosystem for this new project.
So I guess the core functionality of your app from day one is that there will be users taking pulls, and then they'll own that data and it'll get distributed based on different permissions. So an example of a limitation of Ethereum would be if I would take a survey as an end user, I would have to pay gas to submit my poll, basically, because I'd have to transmit my response to the blockchain. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, it's like one way. Some other ways I've seen developers do on Ethereum is they have a gas pool from the company that pays for these transactions for the users. But still, the interaction, you have to be logged in on a website, and you need to have MetaMask and or Mist, and then you would be able to interact with the actual application to answer polls. So we wanted to go with a different route. We wanted to build a mobile DApp, something that we wouldn't be able to actually do effectively with Ethereum and the current ecosystem. I think they're working on some tools for it. But the way we're doing it is the mobile app, you will log in using your EOS account, and now you tied in your EOS identity with the data that you provide. And then the data that you provide will live on your phone, and some of it can go to the blockchain if you allow it. And if you do allow it, you will always get it encrypted using a private key on your phone, and no one will be able to have access to it, even if it goes on the blockchain, unless you give them the permission to.
So basically the data is housed, so the data from all of these poll answers or information about your age, gender, things like that, that would all be on your phone stored locally?
So I'm talking about the user's data. So there's two kind of data that we're talking about here. So the user's personal information, anything personal will not be owned by anyone other than the user. So the data will be, yes, like gender, location, address, date of birth, and employer expertise. These kind of information are user data owned, and they will not be any like only the user will have access to it. There's the other data. So like we mentioned, we're launching a polling application where we just ask simple questions and answer. And when the user answer these questions, they can choose whether they want their data to also be part of the answer. So their personal data will be anonymized in the end, and then it will be encrypted, and then it will be stored on the blockchain as part of the answer, as part of the poll, so that then the full data, the full result of a poll will be all like encrypted and anonymized and aggregated. And then this kind of data is useful for analytics company and if they end up paying for it, the users who participated and who decided to share some of their information in the poll will get rewarded with our Lumeos backed token.
So what is the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, so the main problem is today we just like share so much data online, and the fact is when you share data on a website, a blogging site, YouTube, Instagram, and social media, you don't own any of the data that you share. It's owned by the companies that are hosting, the centralized companies basically, and because they own it, they can dictate how much you can make out of it, if any. And how much and who has access to it. You can control its privacy, definitely, but there might always be some bugs. And I guess like the major thing that kind of put this into perspective is what happened with Cambridge Analytica, which is a bug in Facebook allowed a app developer to have access to millions of users' data, even though those people didn't actually share those data with that third-party app. So bugs can happen. With a blockchain, we can actually solve this issue from its root. The root cause of these things is the fact that the user is not owning their data. So we're starting with the ownership perspective. When you own your user data, you can do anything with it, including putting the terms of your monetization and at the same time fully controlling its privacy.
So what is the dollar value of on something like a Facebook? What is like my personal data worth to I guess market researchers or whoever the people or companies would be who'd be interested in all of this pool data and analyzing it? What is an individual's data actually worth in dollars on the current system?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the answer is it depends, but I can give you like an average dollar value from I think from Facebook's earnings previously. So I think on average, a user on Facebook, the data for a user on Facebook is around $30 a year, based on like regular access. And this doesn't sound like too much data, too much money, but they kind of add up. If you actually share so much of your life on Facebook, that number can go up to hundreds of dollars a year, maybe even thousands of dollars. And if you talk about all kind of online activity that you do, that number goes easily to become like in the tens of thousands of dollars a year. And this is kind of a missed opportunity. I mean, for the users who, especially the ones who are sharing viral content on social media and whatnot, they're not getting what they actually deserve from it. But yeah, most important is the fact that we want to educate the user that data is equal money, which is something that we're not like in the internet age. We're used to just sharing any kind of data without having to worry about like whether it's actually worth something. On the other hand, there's something as simple as an email address in marketing. It has a cost on it because now that it's not the fact that it's one email, it's the fact that the aggregation of so many emails and being able to target email anyone in like a certain area is huge from a marketing perspective. And that's why like an email address even have its own value, a dollar value associated with it.
So who are the future users on the Lumeos platform going to be? So you have the end users who are sharing their data, completing the polls, but is there another user type that's interested in offering to purchase that data and that would be paid for in Lumeos and it would be distributed to the pool takers? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So the way we want to start this is users to users, meaning we're targeting crypto community. We're asking crypto questions, and prospective investors will be interested to see some of these breakdowns, and they would be interested in paying for those answers. But in the future, we want to expand this to basically anyone. Once we come up with some viral polls, we're working with advertiser brokers in order to basically allow to tell them that we have this kind of data and what kind of information would you be interested in order to pay for it, and how much would you pay for these things. And they come through us, they pay us, whether it's in actual fiat or in cryptocurrency, and we always do the conversion to Lumeos at that point, and then give the creator of the poll something back. The participants on the poll will give them something, and then we'll take a small cut as well. So that's like the basic idea on the platform. There's the poll creator, the poll participants, and then the broker, the people who wants to buy this data, whether they're advertisers or regular users or small businesses.
Cool. So I know you guys have a big release here coming up. Hopefully we'll get this podcast published for it. But where is the company at today? What are you working on? What's your funding model for yourselves? And I'll let you go from here.
Yeah, we've been working on this for a few months, self-funded. We believe in I noticed last year, we've been in the blockchain space, so many ICOs got funded just for writing a white paper. This is not ideal. This is not scalable. We want to go as a traditional company, like a traditional startup, come up with an idea, build a quick prototype and MVP, get some users to use it and get their feedback, and then go for a funding stage. So that's why, at this point, we have a mobile application. We have a mobile, decentralized application that we've been testing internally, and we're opening it up for our beta users August 1st. We have a list of hundreds of users. We're over 500 users now who are interested in testing out our beta and giving us feedback throughout August. So yeah, we're very excited about that. As for funding, we're looking at this point, now that we have an application out there that works and have a vision for the few coming years, we're looking for a seed round at this point, mainly targeting the EOS, big EOS backers, VCs.
What kind of interactions have you had with the EOS VCs so far, or any VCs really? Because right now, from my research, you guys raised a private round of funding, or are you in the process of that private round of funding?
Yeah, we're in the process. We're talking to, traditional VCs, people who are in the Ethereum space, people who are EOS heavy. EOS people understand the idea immediately; they love it. Ethereum people are also kind of jumping on EOS at this point, which is very interesting. It took a while, but once they're convinced of why we decided to build on EOS versus Ethereum, they were like, yeah, that makes sense. And from both an engineering perspective and from a marketing perspective. So we're getting some good traction. At this point, we want to make sure to limit it to people to very few small round, because once we launch our token and have our utility established, then we go for a actual private sale for the actual token. At this point, given that we don't have a token, we're going for a seed round in equity.
Yeah. So first of all, I respect the way you are going about this, because one of the biggest frustrations for me is ICOs raising upwards, sometimes $30 or more million with nothing more than a white paper. The fact that you wanted to have a working application with a user base of 500 plus, get feedback, private funding, and right now the funding is equity into the Lumeos, the company, right? This isn't a token sale round.
Yeah, so still pending some of our legal meetings, but basically we're doing a convertible equity, which is kind of a new way of doing this. We want to have our token Lumeos as a utility token, and if we get investor money at this point, given that the token is not on the mainnet yet, it's not considered a utility, because the investor or the buyer of the token will be basically buying a security. So what we want to do for this round, and any kind of funding that we get before the launch of the token and proven utility of the token, is a equity round where the buyers or the users who are interested in coming in will buy equity in the company that they can convert into tokens once the token is proven to become a utility token. So we're giving the investor the option to basically give us back the equity, and get the tokens for better liquidity on their end, which is what most crypto investors are looking for.
So could you kind of walk me through the timeline from now until, let's say, a year from now of what else is going to be happening? Because I've read different things about some airdrops, and then the private funding, and then if you do a public round, why don't you walk us through from August 1st when your mobile app launches throughout the next year?
So we have a lot of milestones, but basically let's start with August 1st. August 1st, we're launching the mobile app, and we're working on the seed round, the seed equity round at this point. In September, we're opening up the app for anyone, basically, and basically launching our utility. And during that month, we're planning to do an airdrop. Mainly, we want to do an airdrop, but we don't want to use the Genesis snapshot. So we're still studying. We're finalizing how we're planning to do it. And mainly, we want to reward any new EOS comers, because none of the airdrops that happened already have done this. All took a snapshot of all the EOS users on Genesis. In order to get, EOS for mass adoption, you need to always reward the new users who are coming in. So it just makes sense. And so we're doing a small airdrop for the EOS holders. And we're still also studying it a bit, given the latest RAM issues, because it will be very expensive to do that. So we're looking into other alternatives, like the air grab model from Scatter, or a smart drop that we're trying to put together at this point. But then we want to do another wave of airdrops for people who actually downloaded our application, put in their data, verified it, and started using our app. Basically, we want to reward users on our platform, mainly like the early users, through another round of airdrops, specifically for those accounts that are running. And that will have the more of the tokens, because in the end, we want those users to use the tokens on our website and on our mobile app. Later on, we want to expand outside of crypto users, and we're launching our campus ambassador program, because we want to educate students on blockchain and on data privacy and data ownership issues. So it just makes sense to pretty much like infiltrate all the colleges and the Bitcoin clubs, which we've done already, and then later on we'll just continue moving and getting it onto any kind of website, rather than just like leaving it within our mobile app. In October and November, we're launching our SDK, so that we can embed these polls into news websites, like mainly crypto news websites. And we'll be able to convert a lot of crypto users into our ecosystem that way. And then I guess later on next year, early next year and late next year, we'll be focusing on mostly getting users and keeping them in our ecosystem and growing it as much as possible. The ultimate vision is to pretty much like reimagine the data sharing online, meaning instead of sharing something that you don't own, anything that you share will be your own. And it's just the future experience. It just makes sense to do something about it. So the seed round is actually a small part of the funding. We are also looking. We're not doing a public sale per se, like an ICO or a token generation event. Instead, we're doing a private sale. A private sale for selling 30% of our tokens and then keeping 30% for our pool. And then that 30% will be sold after the utility in September. So it's probably our private sale will go over 4 weeks in end of September.
So for anyone listening that wants to get in touch with you or get involved in these private sales or learn more about your project on a personal level, how do they get a hold of you?
I guess the best way is to sign up on our website or go to our Telegram. So we're on Lumeos.io, Lumeos.io. And our Telegram is t.me/Lumeos.
Awesome. So you mentioned the cost of doing the airdrops. What has your experience been? We've talked about on the show the RAM market and the RAM prices. They've kind of leveled off, but they're still kind of expensive. So what effect has the RAM market had on your plans of all of your token release?
Yeah, for sure. Like we had some delays, mainly technical delays, mainly because we didn't take that into consideration, like what happened with the inflation and the RAM prices. So, for instance, like for our first users, we're going for bring your own EOS account, but for later users, we'll probably create their accounts for them but we have to be careful because they're going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive, especially in our vision of reaching 1 million users very quickly. It also gave us the opportunity to look into other alternatives that are like Telos, for instance, has been doing some interesting work on reducing the price of RAM on their own thing. So we're just like exploring these things. And from a technical perspective, we're kind of changing the design a bit so that we optimize for RAM, just to make sure that we're not wasting, because now it's another precious resource that we need to care about in our development.
So you're investigating some of the EOS forks. You're not necessarily going to use the mainnet, or are you leaning towards one and not the other, or are you just still kind of feeling it out still? It's
an exploration phase, and it's mainly got on our plate specifically because of the recent RAM issues. EOS forks is basically any code that works on EOS will work on an EOS fork. It's, again, any project should be interested in investigating those, whether they end up building something or not on them. It's based on the investigation.
So you guys recently brought on, we mentioned briefly the EOS VC funds, and I'm sure you're in touch with them. I'll ask about that experience in a minute here. But you guys just brought on an advisor from one of only 2 projects that have been announced to be funded by the EOS VC funds. They're funded by Galaxy Digital. You guys brought on, I'm going to mess his name up, Kedar Iyer. He's the director of software at Everpedia. You want to talk about his role a little bit and how you got in touch with him and what role he plays on advising for your project?
Yeah, in fact, like I met Kedar in LA. I was in one of DNA Fund's events that were happening, and DNA is also very big on EOS, and they're in Santa Monica. And when I talked to him about the project, he was very interested. We met with him. We went actually with the Everpedia team over in LA, and they were very interested in our project. So what we did is I talked to Kedar. He was at that point still like finalizing the airdrop for Everpedia. So we talked a lot about the airdrop and how we can do various things on EOS. He's a very technical guy, so he's basically helping. He's been advising us for the last month, mainly on like any EOS issues that we're facing, and what to do with like RAM problems. So he's been very helpful on that as well, and mostly helping us out with our token, with our airdrops.
Has he been able to get you in touch with anyone, let's say at Galaxy Digital, for example? Since we have these funds, we have $1 billion of funds that Block One is distributing. They're in the process of distributing to individual VC funds. Galaxy Digital is the biggest one. They got funded with $325 million from Block One, and all they want to do is fund EOS projects, the best ones, though. So what has your experience been with any of the EOS VC funds? Have you been in talks with any of them?
Yeah, I recently got an intro to Galaxy, and I've been they were very excited about the project, so I'm following up with them for sure. They're located in New York, and they're very excited about. They're always excited when you tell them about EOS for sure.
So how do you measure success with a project like Lumeos? What is the grand vision of all of this? Like 5 to 10 years from now, what is Lumeos? Like when people talk about it, what is it?
That's an awesome question. Again, we want users to, like, the way I envision this is we want user to be able to use the internet, go online the same way they do today, but whenever they have anything important to say, they can put it into boxes, into plugins into the website. And anything that goes into that box, which is going to be like the Lumeos box everywhere, will be their own data. They will be their own, completely owned by them. And our vision is to not be a centralized social media or social networking platform, but we want to basically be into every website, just like a new experience. So think of it as like a steemit that can be plugged into any kind of website, and anyone can get you something back for the data that you're sharing.
And does it go beyond pools, or like what's the phase after pools? Because
so we started with polls because that's like one of the more simple ways of telling the user that, just like by by clicking yes, no, or A, B, you actually can make something out of it. But like after polls, we're going to go with like comments. We're going to go with longer form content. We're going to go with followers and connections and more location data. And we're going to the reviews system where users can have a 1-star, 5-star system for anything, whether it's in e-commerce, whether it's in like Yelp like Yelp or hotels, and then later milestones will focus more on anything else like images and videos and any kind of content that can become very useful.
All right. So we've talked about some RAM prices, about your project. Is there anything you'd like to talk about that you want our listeners to know? We have several thousand listeners for every episode. They're all mostly hardcore EOS users. We've got block producers listening. We have some of the VC funds listening. What do you want to talk about to them?
Yeah, actually, so one thing we actually figured out with the EOS ecosystem is the developer community is kind of weak. I mean, it's not on par with Ethereum currently, and as us positioning ourselves as like the biggest, the number one project in that is building on EOS that is in Silicon Valley, we want to make sure to give back to the community. So we're building a developer community over here in San Francisco, and we've been like really helping out with meetups and spreading the knowledge about EOS. Just yesterday, we actually happened to talk about EOS and Ethereum inside the Uber headquarters in San Francisco. For like interested people inside Uber who are interested in blockchain and what are the latest advancements there. So we're always trying to give back and trying to be the like role model for developers and getting more developers excited about EOS in Silicon Valley.
Do you think that's one of the biggest pain points for blockchain startups is finding talent? That's typically what I hear is it's almost impossible to find enough developers.
Yeah, finding talent has been is always an issue. Fortunately, it's given that we're located in San Francisco, it's a bit easier. My network of connections is pretty big actually, and I'm been like very lucky because you wouldn't be able to find that kind of talent pool everywhere, especially because you have a face-to-face connection rather than like the online connection, which is always a big plus when it comes to crypto projects. Just making sure that validity of people and yeah, for sure, like talent is getting talent is a big part. But the best part about EOS is you can get as long as you know a few things, you can immediately start developing, which is huge. That's why we can get like any software developer, and then we'll explain to them what blockchain is, what EOS is, and then they're good to go within like a few days.
So for someone who's already a mid to senior level developer, what I mean, you did this yourself. You went from a regular developer engineering background, and then you got interested in the blockchain. What advice would you have for someone else who's interested in getting started? Would you advise them to reach out to early projects like yours, or would you advise them on starting on a hobbyist project? How'd you make that transition?
Yeah, for me, it was I just attended a few developer meetups, and I just did the correlation between the centralized world and the decentralized world, and it kind of clicked immediately. Like from distributed systems to decentralized systems is not a big leap, in my opinion. So I was able to get it easily. But I realized that for newcomers who are coming from different backgrounds, yeah, there is going to be some like steep learning curve. We're working on coming up with more meetups and more explanation on basically between myself and my CTO, we're building a developer community and a kind of like explainers for newcomers who are coming from the Ethereum space or who are coming from outside the blockchain space, and educating them about blockchain and EOS and how to build a decentralized application. Why do you need to build a decentralized applications and all those things?
Interesting, Ellie. So you got your big date. It's coming up August 1st. You mentioned earlier it's a group of beta testers. You mentioned, I think, the number of 500. And then later on, maybe a month down the line, you want to open up publicly. Is it closed yet, or could people still get involved with this beta launch?
You can sign up on our website right now, Lumeos.io, and sign up for the become a beta tester at this point, and then we'll drop you an email with instructions on how to download the app and play around with it and give us feedback. And it's an open list, so you can keep on subscribing throughout August, and we're hoping to open it up for the public based on the feedback in September.
And is the app for iOS, Android, or both?
We're working on both Android and iOS. So
awesome. All right, man. It's been great having you on the show. It was interesting learning a little bit about your background, because I think you're a very talented individual. I think you've got great people on your team. I think you're going about the funding of this project in the right way. If people want to learn more about Lumeos, they can go to lumeos.io, check out the white paper. It was great having you on the show, man.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Appreciate it.